Jake Ryan Southgate's The Death of Charlotte Emily is without a doubt the most incredible fan animation ever produced, but it almost didn't happen. Starting with the 10th episode of First Night as Freddy, Jake transitioned the entire production from Blender's Eevee renderer to the Unreal Engine 5, and it looks fantastic, but there was a cost to these improved visuals. Whenever Jake went to render out a scene, he'd encounter bizarre glitches. Characters' facial motion capture would break, leading to strange and grotesque expressions. When that was fixed, everyone's hair started to go crazy. Most bizarre was when Jake woke up one morning and checked on an overnight render, only to discover that this had happened to Evan's neck. Also, for some reason, his clothes became invisible. Other renders would be ruined by inexplicable artifacts. Planes would randomly crash into scenes. Characters would start spasming and glitching out.
No, Dad, it's fine, honestly.
And then, out of nowhere, Henry would start rubbing his nipples. Then, Jake's computer exploded, and he literally had to tape it back together to finish the episode. In spite of all of this, Jake persevered, and we now have what is, again, without a doubt, the greatest fan animation ever made.
Pull a string and I'll wink at you. I'm your puppet.
William Afton had just landed in Orlando, Florida for the IAAPA convention, an annual trade show at which theme park, arcade, and carnival owners gather to get a glimpse of the community's latest inventions and, hopefully, place some orders. Afton isn't alone though. He's brought with him his young family, his wife Clara and their two sons, Michael and Evan. William, a puppeteer by trade, has arrived at the convention to exhibit a performance with a prized family heirloom, a vintage black and white marionette. However, upon entering the hall, the family is immediately enamored by another exhibit, a programmable, animated robotic endoskeleton being demonstrated by the awkward but brilliant Henry Emily. At that moment, William Afton knew that he needed to partner with this man. He needed this robotic technology.
In 20 years of family entertainment, I have never seen anything like this. Well, it's complicated. And a lot of hard work. There's a lot of gears and a lot of tears. And yet, it's so simple. Even a child can puppeteer. Well, I'm just surprised Clara recognized me. I haven't seen her home since '73. She left in such a hurry last time we... Can you build another one? Oh, sorry. Another animatronic? Yes. Oh. Oh. Well, does that mean you're interested? Interested? Henry, with your machines and my puppetry, we can build a legacy far greater than anyone could have ever dreamed of.
In a happy coincidence, Henry's daughter Charlotte, or Charlie for short, was around Michael's age, and she and the Afton boys would become best friends. Less than 1 year later, William and Henry would open Fredbear's Family Diner, an innovative family entertainment restaurant featuring two performing animatronics based on Henry's technology, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. Furthermore, during this period, Clara gives birth to what would be the Aftons' final child, a girl who they name Elizabeth. Wait, hold on. That means Clara was pregnant during this scene, where she's smoking cigarettes. Nice.
Pull another string and I'll kiss your lips. I'm your puppet. Snap your fingers and I'll turn you some flips. I'm your puppet.
A year after opening, Fredbear's Family Diner has become a tremendous success, drawing massive crowds every weekend. Between both the robots as well as William and Henry's performances in costume versions of the characters, the restaurant began to attract a lot of attention, and during their performance one night, the duo was approached by millionaire venture capitalist Tony Fazakis. Is his name Tony? I just made that up? Okay, no, his name is Tony now, sorry.
I like 'em big, I like 'em chunky, I like 'em.
Little hand, I'm your puppet. I'm your puppet.
Wait a minute. A second location? Right here, in Hurricane. And he's giving us $500,000 to do it. Well, what does Mr. Fazbear want to return? Well, a 20% stake and his name on the door. See, I was thinking Freddy Fazbear's. Well, it has a nice ring to it. Yeah, no, I don't know about this, Will. Look, haven't we got a good thing going on here? Which is why it'll be a waste if I don't... if we don't take this opportunity. How do you feel about a few redesigns?
And thus, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was born. While it would still feature Henry's technology, for a variety of legal reasons, the new establishment would be a completely separate business entity from Fredbear's, featuring a new cast of characters. Unfortunately, the influx of money and attention took a toll on William and Henry's relationship, with the former acting more and more selfishly. Henry was timid and awkward, and William was outgoing and theatrical, and he began to spend more of his time focusing on the business side of things, leaving Henry and Charlie to pick up a lot of the slack.
Right this way, Mr. Fazbear. He's in his office this way.
Thank you, Robert. Merry Christmas.
Oh, it's Jeremy, but thank you.
Of course, Henry manages to rebel in his own little way, basing the designs of the new Freddy Fazbear on Mr. Fazbear.
You know, Dad, the new Freddy looks very familiar.
What can I say? I needed a reference.
A big reference. Big tummy? Even bigger ideas, huh?
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about, kiddo.
It was also this time that William began to neglect his own family. It's Christmas at Fredbear's and everyone is hanging out, except for Afton, who's sitting alone in his office. With the massive success of the new Freddy Fazbear's location, Mr. Fazbear offers William even more money to open yet another restaurant, this time in Phoenix, Arizona. However, Henry is opposed to this, fearing that the two may be getting in over their heads. Unfortunately, William isn't hearing it, verbally berating and even physically slapping his timid business partner. And Charlie was there to witness all of it. In the summer of 1983, the group arrives in Phoenix with the all-new animatronics for the grand opening of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Palace.
Your puppet. I'm your puppet. I'm your puppet.
All right, everyone, gather round. You've all done an incredible job getting this place together with me and Charlie here over the past week. And I just want to thank... Excuse me, Mr. Emily and little Emily.
Yes, Jeremy?
Do we get to do the staff party now? I kind of want to try the Chica Chocolate Fountain before anyone else.
Well, seeing as it's my birthday today, Jeremy, I should probably get to try it first, right?
Oh yeah, I guess that's how that works.
The group all seem to be in good spirits as they finish setting up the location and prepare for Charlie's birthday party, but just as they're about to begin the celebration, Afton, who has been suspiciously absent during all the manual labor, arrives. When Jake was first working on this scene, he accidentally offset Afton's position about 9 feet to the side of the driver's seat, leading to this.
Wow. Oh, so cool.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Mr. Afton, hi. Are we gonna have the staff party now?
Why, yes, of course. You... funny little man.
Yeah.
Now this 5th location
Shh, everyone, he's talking. Shh.
is a special one. I can tell. And it couldn't have happened without all of your hard work. You've all made this dream of mine, ours, come to life. And for that, you are all officially a part of the Fazbear family. Oh, thank you. Thank you all.
Well done.
Yes, well done.
Yeah.
Yes. And now, let's celebrate.
Oh, okay.
Come on, everyone.
However, as Henry and Charlie move to enter the pizzeria, William stops them.
All right, kiddo. What games do you want to play first? Or do you want to have a bite to eat? What do you feeling? Save some cake for me. I'll take over from here. What? You two go back to the motel and rest up. You look awful. What? No. Charlie's been looking forward to this all day. It's her party just as much as the staff's party. No chance. Everybody's drinking. And what does that look like? Fazbear Entertainment exposed. 15-year-old girl complicit in night of drunken debauchery. No, I won't allow it. William, what are you talking about? Crying out loud, just let her have 5 goddamn minutes to play in the arcade. We leave tomorrow anyway, and the place opens Monday. The boys are looking forward to it too.
No, Dad, it's fine, honestly. Next time we're here, I'll
No,
check it
Charlie.
all out.
I don't work this hard just to...
Dad! It's fine. We can go pick up Michael and Evan and do something together. As a real family.
Henry, the trash goes out tomorrow morning. Roll the bins out before you go. Right. Let's boogie.
You know what, Dad? He's trash.
To be clear, William taking exception to Charlie's presence wasn't genuine. Nobody would care that a 15-year-old girl was at what basically amounts to a family party at which some people were drinking, especially in 1983 when the legal drinking age was 18. More likely, Afton just used Charlie's age as an excuse to keep Henry out of the party. It's almost like William was trying to push Henry out of the business entirely.
What will they do? All of that and more happening now.
Across the street from Freddy's, Henry and the rest of the kids gather at the Juniors Motel.
Clara, I tell you, the baby isn't mine.
Count, I tell you that it is. You're the only vampire I've ever loved. And the baby turns his bottles into powdered milk.
Oh!
birthday, Charlie!
Thank you, little bear.
What does it matter?
You were gone so early this morning, we didn't even get to see you!
Big day, bud. We had so much to do. The pneumatic calibration and sound response checks for the animatronics. We ran all 5 show tapes today, too. And got everything set up for the party.
Yes! The party! Oh, wait, the pizza? The new arcade games? Oh, Dad said he spoke to Mr. Bushnell and he got an early release of Dragon Slayer! Is that right, Henry?
You're excited to see the show, too. Right, Evan?
Well, not the Fazbear 4. No offense, Uncle Henry. They scare me.
When Jake Ryan Southgate first started making episodes of this series, he did everything by himself, including all the voices. Now, Jake is quite a talented voice actor. He voices William, Henry, Michael, and Jeremy, and he does a great job, especially considering he's from New Zealand and actually sounds like this.
Jeremy drunk in this scene, but he's gonna be wearing a little Fazbear costume. Look at him waddle. It's so cute.
However, in episode 1, Jake also voiced Evan, and it's almost impossible for an adult male to voice anyone younger than a teenager, and thus we were graced with Evan's now infamous first line.
They scare me!
Once the series took off, Jake recruited his friend Jen, a very talented voice actress, to voice Evan, and she's amazing. A lot of people have observed that her Evan voice coincidentally sounds quite a lot like Gregory from Security Breach, which is cool because Gregory is, if nothing else, meant to resemble the crying child from FNAF 4, which is also who Evan is based on.
They scare me.
Yeah, that's okay. We're working on it. Right, bud?
I'm just ready for that rematch so I can kick Charlie's ass in the new Mario Bros. Game.
Remind me, last time whose ass was kicked exactly? Oh, that's right, yours.
Hey, stop it. Hey, come here, you.
Whoa, now settle down, everyone. Slight change of plans, boys. Your father, he doesn't want us going.
Wait, what do you mean, no party?
Oh, I knew this would happen.
Why?
He's decided it's an employee-only party. So, we're gonna head out and get dinner ourselves. Somewhere.
He's always like this.
But that's not fair. It's Charlie's birthday.
It's just Dad being an asshole again, isn't it?
Language, young man.
I mean, he's not wrong, Dad.
I just don't get it. You both worked so hard, busting your balls over getting this new location ready. I thought the party was all set up specifically for Charlie afterwards.
It was.
Great. Another excuse for Dad to get wasted and for everyone to just pat him on the back and kiss his ass.
I guess Dad's worked pretty hard too, Michael.
Yeah, Evan, I'm sure getting all the praise for other people's work is exhausting. He can't just buy his way into people liking him all the time. No offense, Henry.
Even a propeller's power cannot blow out these candles. Even the heat of a blast of fire cannot penetrate out those
So,
double-insulated glass.
no cake?
Well, I said I'd drive us somewhere for dinner. And I could do with a couple of scoops of strawberry ice cream. Mint choc chip for the birthday girl. Double chocolate fudge. Banana and butterscotch. I'll just go and freshen up and we can head out.
The Afton boys are understandably very disappointed that they won't be able to attend the party at Freddy's, though Henry is able to lift their spirits with the promise of ice cream, and in a particularly touching moment, we see that Henry knows all of the children's favorite flavors. In many ways, he's more of a father figure to Evan and Michael than the barely present William is. However, when Henry ends up dozing off, the kids decide to take matters into their own hands.
Well, guys, I think we're gonna have to get ourselves something to eat.
I wish I could have tried the chocolate fountain everyone was talking about.
I know, me too. But I bet Jeremy stuck his grubby little fingers in it anyway, so it wouldn't be so good.
Gross. You're probably right.
This just came out, right?
Yeah, Dad got it for me. It's such a cool song! Do you want to listen to it?
Maybe later. Some other time, bud. Time after time. Time after time.
While Evan listens to Cyndi Lauper on his Walkman, Charlie and Michael observe one of William's latest inventions, a series of colored glow-in-the-dark wristwatches.
Sometimes you picture me and want me too far ahead.
What you got there?
No, it's more of Dad's prototype shit. Glow-in-the-dark watches. They're kind of cool, though. And, which color speaks out to you the most, Miss Emily?
How much for the green one, Mr. Afton?
Ew, don't say that. Oh, that sounds
yeah, sorry.
gross.
You're right.
I don't want to be anything like him.
Is he still, you know?
He says I'm one big slip-up from getting sent away. So...
Sent away? To where?
Who knows? Boarding school? Jail? No idea. I don't know why he's so hot and cold with me, but totally fine with Evan.
I'll be waiting. Time after time. You can't look.
At least you tolerate me.
Do I have a choice? Kidding. We're both stuck in here. We're in it together, right?
I just hate the thought of not being around you, you know? You're like, not shy to tell it how it is. No bullshit with you. I like that about you. So, yeah. Watches.
It's sort of subtle, but if you read between the lines, the implication here is that William is both verbally and physically abusive towards his eldest son Michael, who appears to have an inexplicable broken arm throughout the scene. It's also obvious that the now teenaged Michael and Charlie are starting to develop feelings for each other. Bored and having yet to obtain dinner, Charlie comes up with a fateful plan.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's run back to Freddy's and go steal some pizza.
Yes! That sounds so good!
What? No, you can't. Dad said we're not allowed in.
Honestly, screw him. It's my party after all, which means it's our party. And I think it'd be pretty dumb for the birthday girl not to attend, right?
Charlie, look, I want to go with you.
My dad tried his best to get us in, but your dad isn't my dad, so he can't tell me what to do.
But I can't. Dad will be so pissed if he knows we're sneaking out.
He'll never know. We'll be super quick. Run in, sneak around, everyone. Hell, we can go crawl through the vents if need be.
Like a secret agent.
Totally. We'll be in and out before you know
Charlie,
it.
It's late. And it's pouring with rain too. I don't know.
Michael, I've got you. We got this. I know this birthday is a little broken, but I can fix it.
I'm gonna stay. I'll cover for you if Henry wakes up. How about that?
All right, that sounds great. Evan, what do you want?
Okay. Can you bring back a cheese pizza, please?
Oh, screw it. Pepperoni. But hurry back, okay? Don't be gone forever.
Hey, I'm not going forever. I'll be back before you know it. Be good while I'm gone, you two.
When Jake was working on this scene, he sent me what he hoped was a near final draft of it, curious what I thought, and it was bad.
Happy birthday, Charlie!
Thank you, little bear.
Everyone's faces looked weird, they were all jittering around like crazy, and it just didn't look good.
You were gone so early this morning?
Now that the episode is out and it's amazing, we can go back and laugh at this, but at the time, Jake was really devastated. He literally went through grief for this scene. First, he insisted that it wasn't as bad as I was saying. Then, he got really angry at me when I said that the animation in the last episode looked better. Then, we started to think of ways that maybe he could salvage the scene without spending a week redoing everything. Then, Jake got depressed and started contemplating canceling the whole project, went to sleep, and finally, when he woke up, he accepted that he was going to have to redo a bunch of motion capture, cleanup work, etc. While Jake is obviously a far more talented animator than I am, unfortunately, sometimes you can lose sight of the forest for the trees and not realize that a scene just isn't coming together the way you envisioned it. This is why the episode took 7 months to come out. Jake is already attempting something far beyond what anyone else in basically any fandom is doing, and on top of that, he's a bit of a perfectionist. That's why these episodes come out so well. However, at this rate, the project has become unsustainable. These episodes take so long to make that, despite their very high view counts, it just doesn't pay enough for Jake to sustain himself. This is why nobody else really attempts what Jake is doing here. It's incompatible with what YouTube demands of creators. So if you enjoy this series, you want to see more of it, and you don't want Jake to have to compromise on his ambition and quality, please consider supporting him on Patreon. His content really doesn't give him a lot of opportunities to promote it, but projects like this simply can't exist without fan funding. With her father fast asleep, Charlie leaves Junior's motel in the pouring rain and heads across the street to sneak into Freddy Fazbear's.
Go ahead, try and touch your toes. Alright, take care. No, I've got to go, alright? No, go.
Come on, Mr. Afton, come back inside. It's not even midnight yet.
Yes, stop! Where are you going? It's party time!
Yeah, you two. Goodness, I've got to go now. Yes, it's time to head off, all right?
What do you mean, Mr. Afton? The party's only just getting started.
Come on, Mr. Afton.
Kids, I'm sorry, Afton.
Shots.
You are insatiable, you two. But I need to get on the road. It's time for me to go. Afton bids you adieu.
Bye-bye, sir.
Wait, Mr. Afton, don't you want to get some cake for Charlie? It's her birthday after all, and she should probably get some.
Honestly.
Jeremy! Pour me another one!
Judgmental little bitch. Just like her father. It's
needs me. He needs me. And I made him. And I can break him just as easy.
X don't give it to you. Fuck, wait for you to get it on your... Got to win. Break bread with the enemy.
Just as Charlie approaches the pizzeria, a severely intoxicated William Afton emerges, and she just barely manages to hide from him. However, when she tries to enter the pizzeria yet again, the gate slams closed in her face, shutting her out, and as she backs away to evaluate her options, tragically, William strikes her with his car, killing her.
Not like this. Can't do this to me!
Panicking, Afton hides the girl's body in a nearby dumpster and drives away to conceal his damaged car. I've always felt that a serious, faithful adaptation of the Five Nights at Freddy's story was impossible. There are just so many things that don't really get elaborated on, like why Afton killed Charlie or why he killed all the other kids.
I'm going to kill as many children as I can. For you.
He's very much a boogeyman. He's the Voldemort of the story. Pure evil. It works fine in the games, but it's not exactly believable. In Jake's adaptation, we see that Afton was always kind of an obnoxious dude, but that the success of the Fazbear franchise and its continued expansion caused him to grow even more selfish. Furthermore, even before this, the implication is that Afton was an abusive man. However, in spite of all that, he wasn't a killer. What happened to Charlie was an accident. A terrible accident that was 100% Afton's fault due to his own negligence, but it was a second-degree murder, not first. It wasn't premeditated, and it makes Afton's inevitable descent into madness a lot more plausible than in the games, where it's just never really explained. Don't get me wrong, Afton is still a very cartoonish character, but he's still a human. He's not a monster. Not yet. Despite her death, Charlie would make it into the pizzeria that night, and when she did, she found something. Also, fun fact, I performed the vocals on this song. If you enjoyed this video, check out these two covering the other episodes in Jake's series.